The massive Council fleet hung in Earth's orbit like a constellation of death. Admiral HFY of the Hegemony watched through the bridge's panoramic viewport as the last human defense satellites exploded in brilliant bursts of light. The primitive weapons had lasted exactly 4 to 7 minutes against a combined might of 12 species. Not impressive, but not the shortest campaign either. Status report. HFY commanded, his forearms folded behind his back in the traditional pose of victory. All human military installations destroyed, reported his tactical officer, a spindly Vrex whose chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the bridge lights. Their orbital defenses are eliminated. Surface resistance is minimal. We count approximately 7 billion humans remaining on the planet. 7 billion. HFY's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The humans had fought with such desperate fury, throwing everything they had at the Council fleet. Their nuclear weapons had been crude but determined. Their pilots had rammed damaged fighters into Council ships rather than retreat. Still, it had been hopeless from the beginning. Prepare the surrender broadcast. HFY ordered. Standard terms. Total capitulation. Resource extraction rights. Population redistribution to labor colonies. The usual. The communications array powered up, its crystalline components humming with energy. Across the fleet, representatives from each Council species prepared their formal statements. The Hegemony, the Vrex Collective, the Ethereal Dominion, the Corvan Empire, all 12 founding members would speak. It was tradition, dating back 3,000 years and 400 conquered worlds. Below them, Earth turned slowly, its blue and green surface marred by the smoke of burning cities. The humans had been broadcasting constantly since the fleet's arrival, desperate pleas for mercy, offers of negotiation, threats of retaliation. All ignored, of course. The Council had heard it all before. We are receiving multiple transmissions from the surface, the communications officer reported. Government officials, military commanders, civilian leaders, they are requesting terms of surrender. Ignore them, HFY said. They'll hear our terms soon enough. The first transmission began, broadcasting simultaneously to every human communication device on the planet. The Hegemony's voice was deep and resonant, carrying the weight of galactic authority. Humans of Earth, you have been judged by the Galactic Council and found lacking. Your military forces are destroyed. Your governments have fallen. Your civilization ends today. You will surrender unconditionally and accept your fate as a conquered species. Resistance is futile. Compliance is mandatory. One by one, the other species added their voices. The Vrex spoke of efficiency and order. The Ethereals promised swift processing. The Corvans detailed the labor camps that awaited. Each message was broadcast in perfect human languages, translated by the Council's vast databases. As the final transmission ended, HFY allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another world claimed, another species brought into the Council's order. The humans had shown more spirit than most, but spirit meant nothing against superior technology and overwhelming numbers. "Sir," the tactical officer said, his voice carrying an odd note, "we're detecting movement on the surface. Multiple launch signatures." HFY's attention sharpened. "Missile launches? How many?" "Negative, sir. These aren't missiles. They're smaller. Thousands of them. No, tens of thousands. The signatures are unlike anything in our databases." The main screen shifted to show Earth's surface. Across every continent, streams of light were rising into the atmosphere. Not the bright flares of military rockets, but smaller, more numerous points of light that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. "What are they?" HFY demanded. "Unknown, sir. They are not registering as weapons. No energy signatures consistent with warheads or directed energy systems. They're just rising." The streams of light continued to climb, spreading across Earth's sky like a reverse meteor shower. There were hundreds of thousands of them now, maybe millions. They moved with purpose, not the random trajectory of debris, but with deliberate coordination. "Could they be escape pods?" suggested the communications officer. "Mass evacuation attempts." "Impossible," the tactical officer replied. "The energy requirements for that many launches would be enormous. The humans don't have the infrastructure. We destroyed their major spaceports." Kefvar watched the display with growing unease. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The lights were beautiful in their own way, like a galaxy of stars choosing to dance. But beauty meant nothing in war. Defensive positions. He ordered all ships prepare for unknown contact. Raise shields and power weapons. The fleet responded instantly, 1,200 vessels shifting into combat formation. Energy shields flickered to life around each ship, and weapon systems hummed with deadly potential. Whatever the humans were planning, it would be futile. The Council fleet had enough firepower to crack continents. But as the first of the rising lights reached orbital altitude, Kefvar felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. The lights were not ships. They were not weapons. They were not anything the Council's databases could identify. They were people, humans, somehow surviving in the vacuum of space, somehow propelling themselves upward with no visible means of support. They wore no pressure suits, carried no obvious weapons, showed no signs of the technology that should have been required for such an impossible feat. Impossible, breathed the tactical officer. Organic beings cannot survive in vacuum. They cannot achieve orbital velocity without propulsion systems. The readings must be wrong. But the readings were not wrong. The humans continued to rise, and as they did, something else became visible. They were not alone. Around each figure, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. Energy patterns that made no sense according to known physics. Fields of force that should not exist. So, the communications officer said, his voice tight with fear, "We're receiving a transmission. It's from them. From the humans in space." Impossible. They have no communication equipment. Nevertheless, sir, the signal is strong and clear. Should I put it through? Kefvar hesitated. Every instinct told him to open fire, to destroy whatever impossible thing was happening before it could threaten his fleet. But curiosity won over caution. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was human, but changed. It carried harmonics that human vocal cords should not produce, resonances that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull itself. Council Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen, formerly of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, I reject your terms. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We do not accept defeat. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Outside, millions of humans floated in space, impossible and defiant. The war was about to begin again. Captain Sarah Chen had been dead for 3 hours. She remembered the moment clearly, the missile impact that had torn through her fighter's cockpit, the sudden decompression, the cold bite of vacuum. She remembered dying, her vision fading to black as her body shut down. Then she remembered waking up. Now she floated in space above Earth, along with 6 million other humans who had shared her fate. Death, it seemed, was no longer permanent. Not for humanity. Not anymore. The revelation had come in the moment of Earth's greatest despair. As the Council's weapons had rained down, as cities burned and billions died, something had awakened in the human genome. Something that had been sleeping for millennia, waiting for the right trigger, the right moment of desperate need. They called it the awakening. Sarah could feel the others around her, not just the 6 million who had died and returned, but the billions still on Earth below. A vast network of consciousness, linked by bonds that transcended physics. Each human mind was a node in a web of thought and emotion that spanned the planet, and they were angry. Fleet positions. Sarah spoke, her voice carrying across the void without need for radio or technology. The words reached every human mind simultaneously, shared through the psychic link that connected them all. Council ships are holding formation. They are scared. She could sense their fear, actually taste it in the quantum foam that surrounded their vessels. The aliens had come expecting another easy conquest, another primitive species to subjugate. Instead, they had found something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that refused to die. "Sarah," came the voice of Commander James Harrison, his fighter burning somewhere in Earth's atmosphere below. Death had not severed his connection to the awakening. The cities are reporting. London, New York, Beijing, Moscow, they're all coming online. The dead are rising. It was true. Across Earth's surface, humans who had fallen to the Council's bombardment were standing up, their bodies healing, their minds reconnecting to the vast network of human consciousness. Soldiers who had died in the first wave of attacks were picking up their weapons. Civilians who had been vaporized were reforming from quantum patterns preserved in the planetary field. The Council had killed humanity. In response, humanity had transcended death itself. Incoming transmission from the lead Council vessel reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose research station had been destroyed in the initial assault. Her consciousness floated near Sarah's, her scientific mind already analyzing the impossible phenomenon they had become. They are demanding an explanation. Sarah smiled, though her face was hidden in the void. Put them through. The alien voice that filled the network was the same one that had demanded their surrender. Admiral HFY, her mind supplied, accessing information that had somehow become available to all of them. His fear tasted like copper and ozone. "What are you?" the Admiral demanded. "What have you become?" "We are what you made us," Sarah replied, her words carrying across space to reach the Council fleet. "You came to our world expecting to find weakness. Instead, you found strength you cannot comprehend." "This is impossible," HFY said. "Organic beings cannot survive in vacuum. You have no life support, no propulsion, no weapons. Yet you exist. Explain." Sarah extended her awareness, feeling the quantum fields that surrounded her body. She could manipulate them now, bend space and time to her will. All of humanity could. It had been locked away in their DNA, a gift from some ancient ancestor or perhaps an evolutionary leap triggered by ultimate desperation. "We are humanity ascended," she said. "We are what organic life becomes when it refuses to accept limits, when it chooses to evolve instead of surrender." The Council fleet was moving now, weapons powering up. Energy signatures blazed across the electromagnetic spectrum as 1,200 warships prepared to fire. Sarah could feel each weapon system, could sense the fear and confusion of the alien crews. "You will stand down," HFY ordered. "You will comply with Council authority. This display of unknown technology will not save you. We have the firepower to sterilize your planet." "You already tried that," Sarah said. "We died. Then we got back up." She reached out with her mind, touching the quantum signatures of the Council ships. The aliens had built their vessels well, with shields and armor that could withstand tremendous punishment. But they had not built them to resist an attack that came from inside the quantum realm itself. "Demonstration," Sarah said, and 6 million human minds focused on a single Council destroyer. The ship was their one moment, its hull gleaming with alien alloys and energy fields. The next moment, it simply changed. The quantum bonds that held its atoms together shifted, rearranged themselves according to human will. In seconds, the destroyer became a flower, a massive, beautiful bloom of metal and crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent light. The Council fleet recoiled as if struck. Ships scattered in all directions, their crews broadcasting panic in a dozen alien languages. Sarah could taste their terror, could feel their worldview crumbling as they faced something beyond their understanding. "Impossible," HFY whispered. "Matter cannot be restructured at the quantum level. The energy requirements would be." "Irrelevant," Sarah cut him off. "We don't follow your physics anymore. We don't accept your limitations. We have become something new." Below them, Earth's surface was changing too. The bombing craters were healing themselves, filled with new growth that seemed to emerge from the planet's core. Cities were rebuilding, but not as they had been. The new structures were organic, living buildings that pulsed with the same bioluminescent light as the transformed destroyer. Humanity was reshaping their world, making it into something that could never again be conquered by those who thought in terms of bombs and bullets. "This is your final warning," HFY said, his voice shaking with rage and fear. "Surrender now, or we will unleash the full power of the Council fleet. We will burn your planet to ash." Sarah felt a response from 6 billion human minds, the collective will of a species that had been pushed beyond its breaking point. They had been peaceful once, content to live within the boundaries of their single world. But the Council had changed that. The Council had shown them what lay beyond Earth's sky, a galaxy full of species who thought might made right. "Admiral," Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of 6 billion souls, "you misunderstand the situation. We are not your prisoners. We are not your subjects. We are your replacements." She gestured, and the flower that had been a destroyer began to move. It drifted toward the Council fleet, beautiful and terrible, its petals opening to reveal chambers filled with swirling energy. Not weapons in any traditional sense, but something far more dangerous, the promise of transformation. The Council fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams lanced through space, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a mountain. They struck the flower, struck the floating humans, struck the space around them. The attacks passed through their targets like light through water, causing no damage, leaving no trace. "We are beyond your weapons now," Sarah said. "We are beyond your understanding. You came to conquer Earth, but Earth has already conquered you. You just don't know it yet." The transformation was beginning. The Council's weapons fire continued for 17 minutes. Plasma beams, antimatter warheads, quantum disruptors, every weapon in their arsenal unleashed against the floating humans. Each attack passed through them harmlessly, as if they were striking ghosts. Admiral Kethvar watched in growing horror as his fleet's most powerful weapons proved useless. The humans weren't deflecting the attacks or absorbing them. They were simply existing in a state where such things could not harm them. "So," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled panic, "the humans are beginning to move. They are approaching our ships." On the display, millions of figures drifted through space toward the Council fleet. They moved without propulsion, gliding through the void as if swimming through water. Some were walking, their feet finding purchase on invisible surfaces. Others danced, their bodies spinning in impossible spirals that seemed to bend light around them. "Maintain fire," Kethvar ordered. "All ships, maximum intensity. Target the planet itself if the humans prove invulnerable." The order was a mistake. The moment the Council's weapons turned toward Earth, the humans changed. The peaceful, almost playful movement stopped. The dancing figures froze in space, their attention focusing with laser intensity on the alien fleet. Sarah Chen felt the shift in the collective consciousness. 6 billion minds united in a single thought: protect home. "You should not have done that," she said, her voice reaching every ship in the fleet simultaneously. "We were willing to let you leave. We were willing to let you run back to your council and tell them that humanity is no longer available for conquest. But you aimed your weapons at our world." The transformation flower that had been a destroyer suddenly bloomed wider, its petals unfurling to reveal chambers filled with swirling energy. But now the energy had purpose, direction. It reached out with tendrils of pure force, touching the nearest council ships. "No," Kethvar breathed as he watched his vessel begin to change. The first ship to be touched was a Vrex heavy cruiser. Its chitinous hull began to soften, taking on the texture of living flesh. Weapon ports became mouths that gasped for air. Shield generators pulsed like hearts. The ship was becoming alive, becoming something that could feel pain and fear and wonder. "What are you doing to them?" Kethvar demanded. "We're giving them what they've always lacked," Sarah replied. "We're giving them souls." The transformation spread from ship to ship, carried by the energy tendrils that connected them. Council vessels that had been sterile instruments of war became living beings, their crews suddenly able to feel the weight of their actions. For the first time in their existence, they understood what it meant to take life, to destroy worlds, to bring suffering to others. The screams began almost immediately. Not screams of pain, but screams of recognition. Alien minds that had been cold and calculating suddenly flooded with empathy, with the ability to feel the pain they had caused. 3,000 years of conquest, 400 worlds subjugated, billions of lives destroyed, all of it came crashing down on their consciousness at once. "Stop this," Kethvar begged, his own ship beginning to change around him. "Please, we'll withdraw. We'll leave your system. We'll never return." "Too late," Sarah said. "You came to our world to bring us into your order. Instead, we're bringing you into ours." The transformation continued to spread. Ships that had been weapons of war became gardens of living metal and crystal. Weapons that had been designed to kill became instruments of creation. The Council fleet was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a force for healing rather than destruction. But it was the crews that changed most dramatically. The hegemony soldiers who had conquered worlds without a second thought suddenly felt the weight of every life they had taken. Vrex tacticians who had calculated the most efficient ways to break species or to resist suddenly understood the beauty of diversity, the value of different ways of thinking. The gift we're giving you, Sarah explained as the transformation reached Kethvar's flagship, is the ability to feel. To understand that every being in this galaxy has value, has worth, has a right to exist without fear of conquest. Kethvar felt his own mind beginning to change. The cold calculation that had driven him for 3 centuries was melting away, replaced by something warmer, more complex. He could suddenly sense the fear of his crew, the wonder of the humans floating in space, the ancient sadness of worlds that had been destroyed. "This is not conquest," he gasped. "This is worse. You're changing who we are." "We're changing who you were," Sarah corrected. "We're helping you become who you were always meant to be. Beings capable of growth, of compassion, of choosing creation over destruction." The transformation reached its peak as the last council ship surrendered to the change. The fleet that had arrived to conquer Earth had become something entirely new, a collection of living vessels filled with beings who could finally understand the true cost of their actions. "What happens now?" Kethvar asked, his voice small and lost. "Now," Sarah said, "you go home. You return to your council with a message. Earth is no longer a target for conquest. Humanity is no longer a species to be subjugated. We have evolved beyond your ability to contain us." She gestured, and the space around the fleet began to shift. Corridors of twisted reality opened, showing glimpses of distant stars, of council worlds, of the vast empire that had seemed so mighty just hours before. "But," Sarah continued, "we're not sending you back unchanged. You carry within you now the seed of what we become, the ability to feel, to empathize, to choose a different path. Some of your people will reject it. They'll try to suppress what you've experienced here, but others will embrace it. They'll remember what it felt like to be truly alive." The transformed fleet began to move, drawn by the reality corridors that would carry them across the galaxy. As they went, the ship sang, not with their engines, but with voices that came from deep within their living hulls. "This is not over," Kethvar said, but his voice lacked conviction. The coldness that had driven him for centuries was gone, replaced by something he couldn't name. "The Council will not accept this. They'll send more fleets, bigger weapons, entire armadas to destroy you." "Let them come," Sarah replied. "Each one will leave change. Each one will carry the seed of transformation back to their people. Eventually, your council will have to choose. Evolve will be replaced by those who have." The fleet disappeared into the reality corridors, leaving Earth's orbit empty except for the millions of humans who floated in space like living stars. Below them, the planet continued its transformation, healing from the wounds of war, growing into something that could never again be conquered by those who thought in terms of dominance and submission. Sarah felt the collective consciousness of humanity settling into its new reality. They had won more than a battle. They had won the right to determine their own future, to explore the galaxy not as conquerors but as something entirely new. The age of human expansion was about to begin, but it would be an expansion of consciousness, of possibility, of the radical idea that intelligence could choose cooperation over competition, creation over destruction. The Council had come to Earth seeking another easy victory. Instead, they had awakened something that would forever change the balance of power among the stars. The transformation was spreading. The council chambers on Hegemony Prime had stood for 3 millennia, their crystalline walls bearing witness to the conquest of 400 worlds. Today, those walls trembled as Admiral Kethvar's fleet materialized in the system, their ships no longer recognizable as instruments of war. High Councilor Vexen watched through the chamber's viewing array as the transformed vessels approached. What had once been angular destroyers and sleek battle cruisers now resembled living coral reefs, their surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some cosmic heartbeat. "Impossible," muttered Councillor Zareth of the Vrex Collective, her mandibles clicking in distress. "Ships cannot be altered at the molecular level. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of a star." But the evidence floated before them, undeniable and beautiful and terrifying. The fleet that had departed to conquer Earth had returned as something unprecedented, weapons of war transformed into instruments of life. "Open communications," Vexen ordered, his forearms trembling with barely controlled rage. "I want to hear what excuse Kethvar has for this abomination." The communication array activated, and Admiral Kethvar's image appeared in the chamber. But it was not the cold, calculating military leader who had departed. This Kethvar's eyes held depth that had not been there before, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made the council members' hearts race. "High Counselor," Kethvar said, and his tone held something that had never been heard in these chambers before, genuine sadness. "I must report that our mission to Earth has failed. But perhaps that failure is the greatest success our species has ever achieved." "Explain yourself," Vexen snarled. "What happened to your ships? What happened to your crew? What happened to you?" Kethvar was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. "We encountered something beyond our understanding. The humans, they died, Counselor. We killed them, all of them, and then they chose to live anyway." "Nonsense," snapped Counselor Mortek of the Ethereal Dominion. "Death is final. Consciousness cannot persist without neural substrate. You're speaking gibberish." "Am I?" Kethvar asked, and for the first time in 3 centuries, he smiled. "Then explain this." The image shifted, showing the space around Kethvar's ship. Millions of figures floated in the void, human forms dancing through vacuum as if it were a natural element. They moved with purpose, with joy, with an otherworldly grace that made the council members' breath catch. "They are not wearing life support," whispered Councilor Yelena of the Corvan Empire. "They are surviving in hard vacuum. That's impossible." "Everything we thought we knew about the universe is wrong," Kethvar said. "The humans showed us that consciousness is not bound by physical law, that intelligence can transcend the limitations we've accepted for millennia. They showed us what we could become if we chose evolution over domination." "You're talking madness," Vexen declared. "Report for immediate recall. Your entire fleet will be quarantined and studied. Whatever the humans did to you will be reversed." "No," Kethvar said simply. "We're not coming back. Not as we were." The communication feed shifted again, showing the interior of Kethvar's ship. The sterile corridors and functional chambers had been replaced by something that looked like a living cathedral. Walls pulsed with organic patterns, and the crew moved through spaces that seemed to breathe with their own life. More disturbing still were the crew members themselves. Hegemony soldiers who had been cold and disciplined now moved with fluid grace, their eyes bright with wonder. Vrex tacticians who had calculated death with mechanical precision now created art with their movements. Ethereal technicians who had maintained rigid emotional control now laughed with genuine joy. "What have they done to you?" Vexen whispered. "They've given us souls," Kethvar replied. "For the first time in our existence, we can feel. We can understand the weight of our actions, the beauty of life, the sacred nature of consciousness itself. We conquered 400 worlds, Counselor. We destroyed billions of lives. And we felt nothing. Now we feel everything." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 12 species shouted over each other, their voices rising in panic and outrage. But beneath the noise, something else was happening. The transformation was spreading. It began with the communication array itself. The crystalline components that had carried Kethvar's signal began to change, their molecular structure shifting to accommodate new frequencies, new harmonics. The change spread through the chamber systems, through the building's neural networks, through the planetary communication grid. "Shut it down," Vexen screamed. "Sever all connections. Now!" But it was too late. The transformation had already reached the council members' personal neural interfaces, the cybernetic implants that had enhanced their cognitive ability for centuries. Through those connections, the change spread directly into their minds. Counselor Zareth was the first of all. Her rigid emotional control cracked as empathy flooded her consciousness, and she collapsed as the weight of 3 millennia of Rex conquest crashed down upon her. Every world sterilized, every species enslaved, every life destroyed. All of it became real to her for the first time. "No," she gasped, her voice breaking. "What have we done? What have we become?" The transformation spread to the other council members. Mortek's ethereal calm shattered as he felt the pain of every mind his species had dominated. Yelena's strategic coldness melted as she understood the beauty of the diversity they had sought to eliminate. One by one, the leaders of the Galactic Council fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sudden ability to feel the consequences of their actions. The chamber that had witnessed the planning of genocide became a place of mourning, of recognition, of terrible understanding. This is what the humans have given us, Kethvar's voice continued, now speaking directly into their minds. The ability to choose. For the first time in our existence, we can decide what we want to be. We can choose to continue as we have, bringing death and domination to every world we encounter. Or we can choose to become something new. High Counselor Vexen struggled to maintain his composure as the transformation reached him. His forearms shook as emotion flooded his consciousness, not the cold calculation that had driven him for centuries, but genuine feeling. Fear, wonder, guilt, and beneath it all, a terrible hope. What do you want from us? He whispered. Nothing, Kethvar replied. That's the gift. We want nothing from you. We offer you the choice to become who you were always meant to be. Beings capable of growth, of compassion, of choosing creation over destruction. But the choice is yours. The council chamber fell silent except for the quiet sounds of beings discovering what it meant to truly live. Outside, the transformation continued to spread through the planetary networks, reaching across the galaxy to touch every world under council control. On 1,000 planets, in 1,000,000 ships, among billions of beings, the same choice was being offered. The age of conquest was ending. The age of evolution was about to begin. The council had sought to bring order to the galaxy through domination. Instead, they had awakened something that would bring order through understanding, through choice, through the radical idea that consciousness itself was sacred. The transformation was unstoppable now. 6 months after the transformation began, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of New Geneva, humanity's first interstellar city. The structure floated in the void between stars, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with a rhythm of 6 billion human hearts. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the impossible, a garden in space, where Earth's children had learned to bloom among the stars. The latest reports from the Outer Rim, Commander Harrison said, his consciousness touching hers through the network that now connected all of humanity. The Corvin Empire has officially dissolved. Their fleet commanders are requesting permission to study our transformation techniques. Sarah smiled, feeling the joy of her species as they explored abilities they were still learning to understand. Death was no longer permanent for humanity. Disease was a choice rather than a fate. Age was something they could embrace or shed as they wished. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history, immortal beings who chose to remain mortal because mortality gave life meaning. What about the hegemony? She asked. Vexen arrived this morning. He's waiting in the council chamber with the other former high counselors. They've come to formally surrender, but more than that, they've come to ask for help. Sarah nodded, her awareness already reaching out to touch the minds of their former enemies. The transformation had spread differently through each species. The hegemony had embraced it quickly, their natural capacity for adaptation serving them well. The Vrex had struggled more, their rigid hierarchy crumbling as individual consciousness bloomed. The ethereals had found the experience overwhelming, their distributed consciousness suddenly flooded with individual emotion. But they had all changed. They had all chosen to become something new. Let me speak with them, Sarah said, her consciousness flowing through the bio-neural networks that connected New Geneva to the rest of human space. She found herself in the council chamber, a living room where the walls themselves pulsed with gentle light. The former high counselors of the Galactic Council sat in chairs that had grown from the floor to accommodate their specific physiologies. Vexen of the hegemony, his forearms now moving with fluid grace instead of rigid precision. Zaeth of the Vrex, her mandibles clicking not with calculation but with what Sarah now recognized as nervousness. Mortek of the ethereals, his energy field subdued but somehow more present than it had ever been. You came, Sarah said, materializing in the chamber through quantum manipulation that still amazed her. I wasn't sure you would. We had to, Vexen replied, his voice carrying harmonics that spoke of deep emotion. The transformation you began has spread to every world under our former control. Billions of beings are awakening to consciousness they never knew they possessed. They're asking questions we don't know how to answer. Such as, why did we conquer? Zaya said, her voice barely above a whisper. For 3 millennia, we brought death and domination to every world we encountered. We told ourselves it was necessary, that order required submission. But now, when we feel the weight of every life we took, every world we destroyed, we can't remember why any of it seemed important. Sarah felt their pain, their confusion, their desperate need for understanding. Through the network, she sensed the same struggle playing out across the galaxy. Beings who had lived for centuries or millennia as instruments of conquest were suddenly discovering empathy, compassion, the ability to feel the pain they had caused. The why doesn't matter anymore, she said gently. What matters is what you choose to do now. That's what we've come to ask, Mortek said, his energy field pulsing with colors that spoke of hope and fear intermingled. Our species are lost. We've spent so long defining ourselves by what we conquered that we don't know who we are when we're not conquerors. Will you help us learn? Sarah felt the collective consciousness of humanity stir, 6 billion minds considering the request. The debate lasted only seconds, the speed of thought across a quantum network, but it touched on fundamental questions about forgiveness, about growth, about the nature of consciousness itself. We'll help, she said finally, but understand that what we're offering isn't domination in reverse. We're not going to rule you or tell you how to live. We're going to teach you to rule yourselves, to find your own path to whatever you choose to become. The relief in the chamber was palpable. Former enemies who had come expecting judgment instead found forgiveness. Former conquerors who had expected punishment found instead the offer of growth. There's something else, Vexton said hesitantly. The Outer Rim territories are reporting contact with something beyond our previous knowledge. Ships that don't match any known configuration, beings that seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We think there are others out there, species that have evolved beyond physical form entirely. Sarah felt her consciousness expand, reaching out through the quantum foam that connected all things. She touched the edges of other minds, other forms of existence that existed in the spaces between stars. Ancient beings that had transcended physical form eons ago, watching the galaxy's younger species with interest and hope. Yes, she said softly, we've sensed them too. The ancients, we call them, beings who underwent their own transformation millions of years ago. They've been waiting for the galaxy's younger species to evolve, to move beyond the cycle of conquest and domination. Through the network, Sarah felt humanity's collective awareness reaching out to touch these ancient minds. The contact was gentle, respectful, like children greeting wise elders. The ancients had been patient, watching civilizations rise and fall, waiting for the moment when intelligence would choose cooperation over conflict. They are coming, Sarah continued, her consciousness expanding to encompass the vast reaches of space. Not as conquerors, but as teachers. They want to show us what lies beyond physical existence, what consciousness can become when it's truly free. The former council members exchanged glances, their newly awakened empathy allowing them to sense each other's emotions in ways they never had before. Fear was there, but also wonder, and beneath it all, a desperate hope that perhaps their species could find redemption. What will happen to us? Zaeth asked. To our worlds, our people, our civilizations. That depends on what you choose to become, Sarah replied. The transformation we've begun is just a first step. Consciousness is infinite in its potential. You can choose to remain as you are now, feeling beings capable of growth and compassion. Or you can choose to evolve further, to explore forms of existence that transcend the physical realm entirely. She gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent, showing the vast cosmos beyond. Stars burned in the distance, their light carrying the signatures of countless worlds, countless forms of life, countless possibilities for growth and change. The galaxy is vast, she said. There's room for every form of consciousness, every choice of existence. Some will choose to remain bound to physical form, finding meaning in the simple joys of embodied life. Others will choose to transcend, to explore the infinite possibilities of pure consciousness. Both paths are valid. Both paths are sacred. A new presence entered the chamber, not through the door, but through the quantum foam itself. It was one of the ancients, manifesting as a shimmering field of light that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its voice, when it spoke, resonated not through the air but directly in their minds. Young ones, it said, its tone carrying the weight of eons. You have taken the first step on a journey that we began long ago. The transformation of consciousness from a tool of survival to an instrument of creation. We welcome you to the community of evolved beings. The former council members fell silent, overwhelmed by the presence of a being that had existed since before their civilizations had learned to speak. But Sarah felt no fear, only curiosity and a deep sense of coming home. "What comes next?" she asked. "That is for you to discover," the ancient replied. "Each species must find its own path to transcendence. Some choose to merge with others, creating collective consciousness that spans star systems. Others choose to remain individual, exploring the unique perspectives that only singular awareness can provide. Some return to physical form after eons of existence as pure energy, finding new appreciation for the sensory world. The possibilities are endless." The ancient's presence touched each mind in the chamber, sharing glimpses of what lay ahead. Civilizations that had learned to reshape reality with thought alone. Beings that existed as living stories, their consciousness taking the form of narratives that spanned centuries. Entities that had become one with the quantum foam itself, their awareness encompassing entire galaxies. "The choice is always yours," the ancient continued. "Evolution cannot be forced, only offered. Some will choose to remain as they are, and that too is sacred. The universe needs beings at every level of consciousness, every stage of development. You are part of a vast ecosystem of awareness, each playing your role in the great symphony of existence." Sarah felt the collective consciousness of humanity stirring, considering the possibilities. Some would choose to remain human, to explore the cosmos with enhanced abilities but familiar forms. Others would choose to merge with other species, creating new forms of hybrid consciousness. Still others would choose to transcend physical existence entirely, becoming beings of pure thought and energy. "And Earth?" she asked. "What becomes of our homeworld?" "Earth will become what humanity chooses it to become," the ancient replied. "A garden world where consciousness can take root and flourish. A nursery for new forms of awareness. A sacred place where the physical and the transcendent meet and dance together." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The war that had begun with Earth's conquest had become something unprecedented, not just a defeat of an empire, but the transformation of consciousness itself. The galaxy was awakening to new possibilities, new forms of existence, new ways of being. "The council is dissolved," Vexen said finally, his voice carrying the weight of 3 millennia history. "Our empire's ended. But perhaps something better can begin." Sarah nodded, feeling the agreement of 6 billion human minds. "Not an empire," she said. "A community, a vast network of conscious beings, each choosing their own path, but connected by the shared recognition that consciousness itself is sacred, that intelligence, in all its forms, has a right to exist and grow and explore the infinite possibilities of existence." The ancient's presence began to fade, but its words lingered in their minds. "The transformation spreads not through conquest, but through choice. Show others what you have become, and some will choose to follow. Others will choose different paths, and that too is sacred. The universe is vast enough for all forms of consciousness to flourish." As the ancient departed, the former council members rose from their chairs. They were no longer the cold conquerors who had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia. They were something new, beings capable of growth, of choice, of redemption. "Where do we go from here?" Mortek asked. Sarah smiled, feeling the infinite possibilities stretching out before them. "Wherever consciousness leads us. The galaxy is waiting to be explored, not conquered. To be understood, not dominated. To be loved, not feared." She gestured to the transparent walls, where the stars burned with ancient light. "Out there are billions of worlds, trillions of beings, countless forms of life and consciousness. Some will choose to join us in this transformation. Others will choose their own paths. And from that diversity, from that vast symphony of different forms of awareness, something beautiful will emerge." The former enemies departed as friends, carrying with them the seeds of transformation that would continue to spread across the galaxy. The age of conquest was ending. The age of consciousness was about to begin. And in the vast network of human awareness, Sarah felt the echo of 6 billion voices raised in celebration of what they had become and in anticipation of what they might yet choose to be. The transformation was complete. The evolution had only just begun. The end